Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
The husband rejoiced at having left his wife with nothing. But when he arrived at the court, he saw his wife smiling. She knew something he hadn't even suspected. Sophia thoughtfully stirred her coffee with a spoon. Today there was no need to rush to work. Finally, the long-awaited vacation had begun. Del Mar would come by a bit later, and they would head straight to the airport for their wonderful trip to the sea. Sophia even closed her eyes in pleasure, anticipating the amazing adventure. It had been a long time since she felt so calm and happy. She was always worrying and anxious. She constantly tried to please Rosario, who reacted to all her attempts with indifference. Sophia felt guilty about this, was upset, and read online advice about how to rekindle a husband's interest. But it turned out that the problem was not with her at all. By the way, Ernesta's friend said it right from the start, but in her state, Sophia couldn't believe it. But Ernesta was a true friend. She had proved to Sophia who was truly at fault in their home. Sophia and Rosario met when they were already quite grown-up and accomplished individuals. At that time, they had both graduated from universities, she from an economics faculty, and he from an engineering one. They were working at their first jobs. They were earning quite well, by the way. Sophia had long been living alone in a 2-bedroom apartment inherited from her paternal grandfather. Sophia didn't remember this relative, but she was very grateful to him for such a wonderful start in her life. During childhood, Sophia's family had little contact with her grandfather as they lived far away in the countryside, too far for frequent visits to the city. Moreover, her father wasn't particularly fond of his father. He had left the family when his only son was 10 years old. Apparently, he had taken a mistress, found a good job in the city, bought an apartment, and almost forgot about his child from his first marriage. In general, Sophia's father had grievances against his parent, but he still left the apartment to his grown-up son, even though they had hardly communicated. This apartment turned out to be quite timely. Sophia had just finished school, and the issue of applying to university had arisen. The girl was quite ambitious and dreamed of becoming an economist. This meant she would most likely have to move to the city into a student dormitory. Her parents were worried. "I know what goes on in those dorms," her mother shook her head. "They won't let you study properly there." Her father weakly disagreed, but all his arguments were countered by her mother's ideas about life in a student dormitory. Sophia herself was a bit scared of these changes. And then, like a gift from heaven, the apartment, and what an apartment! 2 rooms, with a good renovation, located in the city center, just a couple of stops from the university. What could be better? Her parents helped her settle into the new place and then left, and a new life began for Sophia. Exciting, sometimes challenging, but very, very interesting. Studies took up a lot of time and effort, but Sophia managed everything. She went out with new friends, submitted her coursework on time, and even had short, pleasant romances. She felt completely grown up and independent. She dreamed of getting her diploma as soon as possible and starting work to earn money. To buy beautiful clothes, go to cafes and restaurants, and travel. Her parents, of course, helped financially, but it was only enough for the essentials. Sophia didn't ask for more, understanding that it was hard for her mother and father as well. But she dreamed of a beautiful life. And finally, the long-awaited diploma was in her hands. With honors, an important detail. After all, studying had been Sophia's top priority all these years. The girl thought that a young professional like her would be eagerly welcomed everywhere. But it soon became clear that Sophia was mistaken. She knocked on the doors of various companies, left her resume everywhere, went to interviews, and faced rejection everywhere. Only at one place did Sophia hear the real reason for her failures, rather than the usual cliché, "We'll call you back. You see, you have no experience at all, and we don't have the time to train you. We need a specialist who has already dealt with this type of work." Yet, luck smiled on Sophia. She was eventually hired in the sales department. Moreover, at a rather large and prestigious company. At first, the former student worked in the lowest positions, but Sophia worked hard and she was noticed. Promotion began, and by the time she met Rosario, she was already a department head's assistant. It was also at work that Sophia met a girl who would later become her best friend. Ernesta worked in the HR department and was 2 years older than the new employee. Beautiful, assertive, and confident. She initially took Sophia under her wing, and then the girls became true friends. It was simply wonderful. Sophia hadn't realized before how much she needed a friend like Ernesta. One day, a young man visited their office. Attractive, athletic, and fit. Sophia immediately took notice of him. Ernesta, of course, noticed this and smiled mysteriously. "So, do you like him?" "Oh, not at all," Sophia replied somewhat childishly, causing Ernesta to smile even wider. "He's an engineer from the electrical equipment factory. He has some important business with our manager," Ernesta informed her friend. "Want me to find out more about him?" "No," Sophia replied and went to her office. She had a lot of work to do. About half an hour later, Sophia went to the water cooler and encountered the same guy again. He looked a bit confused. Noticing Sophia, he smiled and walked towards her. The girl froze. Now she could see the stranger better, and she liked him more and more. Gray, perceptive eyes, sharp cheekbones, a well-shaped nose, clearly defined lips, slightly tousled hair. The tight muscles visible under his short-sleeved shirt indicated that the young man was obviously into sports. Later, it would turn out that he swam on Wednesdays and Saturdays. "Good afternoon," the guy smiled at Sophia. It was an incredibly charming smile that immediately made her feel warmer. "You see, it's my first time here and I seem to have gotten lost. I don't even know how it happened. Anyway, I need to find the exit." "Yes, we have quite the catacombs here." Sophia nodded. Many people get confused. The architect must have had quite an imagination, that's for sure, Sophia smiled. "Don't worry, I'll show you the way out." And so they went. Sophia deliberately took the stranger on a longer route. She enjoyed walking in his company, exchanging jokes about the intricate office architecture and the ever-changing weather. Her companion had a wonderful sense of humor. Overall, it was easy and pleasant to be with him. "Here's the exit," Sophia said with a hint of regret in her voice. "Thank you. You've really saved me," the guy said, looking directly into her eyes. He looked at her in a special way, and Sophia liked his gaze very much. It made her feel beautiful. Of course, he suggested they get to know each other better. Sophia had little doubt that this would happen, it was only natural. She willingly gave her name and even provided Rosario's phone number. When Sophia returned to her workplace, she felt like a different person. She felt uplifted. Her intuition told her that big changes were coming in her life. Rosario seemed to be someone special. By the end of the workday, the excitement had somewhat subsided. Rosario had taken her phone number, but he hadn't called or even sent a text. It felt a bit strange and disappointing. "Well, come on." Ernesta, who was of course immediately informed of the situation, exclaimed. "The guy might be busy with important business in the city. And here you are, in a panic." Ernesta always had a calming effect on Sophia, and this time her encouragement helped. The girl composed herself, focused on her tasks, and then came the long-awaited message, "I can't stop thinking about you, I can't work. Would you mind if I meet you after work today and we go for a walk? What time do you finish?" Was Sophia against it? No, she was very much in favor. So, they arranged to meet. She had to cancel her movie plans with Ernesta, but her friend, of course, wasn't offended. "Go on," Ernesta smiled. "Go chase your happiness. I can see how anxious you are." That evening, Rosario was waiting for Sophia at the entrance. He had a decent car, not a luxury foreign one, but a solid mid-range vehicle. They went to the waterfront, of course. Summer was in full swing. At this time of year, the most beautiful place in their city was the waterfront. It always seemed to be a celebration: colorful, cheerful people, music, the smell of popcorn and cotton candy, happy faces everywhere. Young people met and got to know each other. Rosario turned out to be Sofia's age. He had also recently graduated from university and was now working as an engineer at the electrical equipment factory. He hoped to head a department soon, and it seemed that everything was heading in that direction. Rosario lived with his mother, who also worked at the same factory. The young man didn't know his father, which he told Sofia right away. He spoke so easily and casually about it that Sofia could tell he had long come to terms with it and wasn't suffering at all. Sofia found herself liking Rosario more and more. He immediately took the initiative, which greatly appealed to her. Moreover, Rosario knew how to give compliments that made Sofia's head spin. His words seemed genuinely sincere. That first evening, sparks flew between them. It was a wonderful feeling. They kissed, held hands, revealed their secrets to each other, and felt incredibly close from the very first date. It was probably Sofia's first serious relationship. At first, Sofia and Rosario dated, and then it just naturally happened that he moved into her apartment. Neither wanted to part ways. They both dreamed of waking up in each other's arms. Once he stayed overnight, then another. Gradually, Rosario's belongings, clothes, and dishes appeared in Sofia's apartment, which made her very happy. Eventually, Sofia suggested they move in together. After all, they weren't school kids holding hands anymore. They were adults and had the right to. There were some concerns that living together might kill the romance, but nothing of the sort happened. On the contrary, they grew even closer and more affectionate. For Sofia, there was nothing better and more pleasant than lying in Rosario's arms in front of the TV in the evening, enjoying the warmth, the scent, and the closeness of her loved one. Making plans together felt very familial. Ernesto was happy for her friend. Her own personal life wasn't going as smoothly. Her relationships often fell apart quickly. Almost always, she was disappointed in her latest suitor, but Ernesto never gave up or lost heart. "Looking at you and Rosario, I understand. I could have the same too," she sometimes told her friend. "You are like a model for me and a hope." Sofia was pleased to hear such words. Time passed. Rosario and Sofia continued as before. Nothing changed. They worked, met with friends, and went to parties. They tried to time their vacations so they could travel together. They had been to so many places. They traveled around the country and flew abroad. They both enjoyed discovering new places, strolling through big, beautiful cities. In everyday life, everything was more than wonderful. There were no arguments about cleaning or cooking. Whoever got home earlier took care of the household chores. Rosario had no problem washing the floors or cooking dinner. In fact, Sofia thought he cooked even better than she did. The only thing that bothered Sofia was that Rosario hadn't proposed, even though they had been living together for almost 3 years. It was somewhat troubling. She couldn't bring it up herself. It felt awkward. And she didn't want to pressure him. She shared her concerns only with Ernesto. Ernesto seemed supportive but was also puzzled. Who needs that stamp in the passport? The main thing is that you live harmoniously. Everything is good. What more do you need? Well, actually, I want children already. It's about time. Does he know about that? He knows. We discussed it. But we talked about having children as if it were a distant future. Well, then what's the problem? If you really want a child, tell him about it. I think everything will work out. Sofia did just that. She brought up the topic of having a baby. Rosario was initially surprised, but then his face lit up with a bright smile. You know, it really is time. Of course, we need to get married first. We'll take a vacation and then start planning right away. Everything turned out to be so easy and straightforward. It felt like a weight had been lifted off Sofia's shoulders, and she thought once again how lucky she was with Rosario. Everything that followed was very beautiful and vibrant. First came the official proposal at a restaurant with the sounds of a violinist, then meeting each other's parents. The wedding was a beautiful and joyful celebration, with friends and family of both the bride and groom in attendance. And then, the honeymoon. The newlyweds spent their vacation in a beautiful bungalow on a luxurious beach, diving into the turquoise water right from the porch each morning. It was an absolutely magnificent 2 weeks. When they returned home, Rosario and Sofia were surprised to find that the passport stamp hadn't really changed anything. They continued to live as they had before the wedding. The only difference now was that they officially planned for a baby. However, things with having a child weren't working out. Month after month, Sofia waited, hoped, and was disappointed. After almost a year, it became clear that it was time to see a doctor. Sofia underwent a full examination, which included a short hospital stay. Many diagnostic procedures were unpleasant and even painful. But Sofia knew why she was enduring all this. At that moment, the desire to become a mother was so strong that it overshadowed all other feelings and emotions. The results showed that Sofia was completely healthy. "We need to check your husband," the doctor told Sofia for the umpteenth time. "This should have been done simultaneously with your examination. Couples are always tested together." Sofia sighed. Rosario stubbornly refused to be examined. He insisted that he was perfectly fine and that the problem was with Sofia. He was so convincing that his wife believed him. But now that it was clear that she was fine, it was important to check Rosario too. Sofia didn't want to start this conversation with her husband. He found it uncomfortable. But what could she do? "What's the matter now?" "I'm fine," Rosario dismissed his wife for the umpteenth time. Recently, he had been nervous and tense. Sofia attributed this to the fact that her husband had been promoted at work and had more responsibilities. On the other hand, her salary had been cut. Tough times at the factory, Rosario explained the situation. Sofia could see that her husband was already struggling. She didn't want to nag or worry him further, but this was important. "Why are you so sure that everything is fine with you?" Sofia said softly, taking Rosario's hand. "There might be a small problem. Many things can be treated nowadays, and quickly and easily. So, no, I don't have any problems." Rosario snapped, pulling his hand away from Sofia's. "Everything is fine with me. I could have had a child before I met you." "What?" Sofia was surprised. "I was seeing someone, didn't plan anything serious with her, but she evidently did. She got pregnant on purpose and started demanding that I marry her, blackmailing me." Sofia stared at her husband with wide eyes. She had never known him like this. Rosario had never told her this story before. "Anyway, this girl tried to manipulate me, but I was adamant. I told her I wouldn't marry her. So, she got rid of the pregnancy, and that was that." Rosario spoke about it as if it were something perfectly natural. "I didn't love her, you understand. We just saw each other occasionally, and she knew that perfectly well. She deliberately got pregnant to trap me, didn't work out," Rosario continued. "So, you see, I'm perfectly fine. If you need to, continue your examination." "And what about you? Don't you need to?" "I have a lot of work right now, so I can't even think about anything else." Sofia understood. She saw that her husband was indeed dedicating a lot of time to work. He was constantly staying late at the office and increasingly flying on business trips. Still, it was painful to hear such words. Yes, Rosario's past story made Sofia see her husband in a different light. It turned out he wasn't always sweet and charming. There had been a girl whom Rosario had used, and then forced to terminate the pregnancy, getting rid of his own child. "Yes, it's an unpleasant story," Ernesta summarized, to whom Sofia had of course revealed everything. "But Rosario is an adult. We all have skeletons in our closets." "I don't." "Well, you're a unique case." Ernesta smiled. "Most people do. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. The important thing is that he's a good family man now, a wonderful husband. Right? Well, yes, Sophia answered hesitantly. She thought about it. Recently, Rosario had been paying little attention to her, only thinking about his work. However, Sophia understood that a man's career was very important. So, don't worry about it, Ernesta concluded. Everyone has their past. As always, talking to her friend calmed Sophia down and put her in a positive mood. She continued to search for the cause of her infertility within herself. Diets, special exercises, meditations, Sophia grasped at any opportunity to experience the joy of motherhood. Buying a new apartment provided a slight distraction. Rosario and Sophia had long dreamed of moving to a more spacious home. They were planning for more than one child, so they needed a larger space. To buy a new 4-bedroom apartment, they had to sell Sophia's 2-room place and spend all their savings on the additional payment. At least they avoided a mortgage with its exorbitant interest rates, which the couple was incredibly happy about. They renovated the new place. Sophia planned 2 rooms as nurseries, although Rosario had suggested setting up a gym and dreamed of his own study. But the long-awaited pregnancy still didn't happen. Sophia was reluctant to accept this. What could she do? Her outlet became Ernesta's daughter. Her friend had a baby from a man who left her as soon as he learned of the pregnancy, and now she was raising the little one alone. Well, not alone, she had her mother's help, of course. Sophia often visited them, took care of the baby, and enjoyed spending time with little Elena. She hoped that such happiness would come her way as well. Everything will happen for you, Ernesta smiled at her. And it will turn out much better than it did for me. Your child will grow up in a complete family, with loving mom and dad. Sophia supported her friend. She felt that Ernesta blamed herself for not having a father for her daughter. And Sophia felt pain for Ernesta. Time passed. Rosario? He continued to distance himself. Whenever possible, he tried to slip away from home, often not answering his wife's questions. He was always lost in his own thoughts, glued to his phone, insisting that he was working. Now, many things about Sophia irritated Rosario. Her complaints about the long-desired but still unattainable child, the oversalted soup, the extra pounds, and even her desire to spend time with a tired husband. And many other things. Sometimes, Sophia felt that just her presence irritated Rosario. She tried, really tried, to be the perfect wife. She bought beautiful homeware that made her feel attractive. She cooked new dishes, came up with family outing ideas, and learned to anticipate Rosario's wishes. During that period, Sophia also scoured the internet for advice on rekindling passion and mutual interest in their relationship. Almost all articles and videos said that the atmosphere in the home was a woman's responsibility. So, Sophia was convinced that the cooling of their relationship was her fault. She had become too fixated on the child, paid little attention to her husband, and let herself go a bit. She used to go to the gym, see the beautician regularly, and visit the spa. Now it was just home, work, doctor's office. Who would be interested in such a woman? There were good events in her life as well. Sophia unexpectedly inherited another apartment. Her distant uncle had died. Sophia had barely known him. No, her mother occasionally talked about her cousin Rafael. Intelligent, determined, but a loner by nature. He had moved to the city, achieved a lot, but never started a family. Occasionally, her mother would visit her brother, help with household chores, talk, and entertain him. But it seemed that Rafael didn't need much interaction. Her mother was always puzzled by how reclusive Rafael was. She pitied him in a sisterly way. Then the elderly man had a heart attack, although nothing seemed to foretell trouble. The doctors couldn't save him. Sophia's mother was sure that Rafael's apartment would go to one of his few friends. Or maybe he had an illegitimate child somewhere. But to her surprise, 6 months later she received a letter from the notary. Rafael had bequeathed the apartment to his cousin. A luxurious apartment in a prestigious area, furnished in an expensive and stylish manner with a wonderful renovation. Her mother had no need for such opulence. She had no intention of moving from the village, where everything was familiar and comforting. And her father wasn't keen on moving to the city either. So, the parents gave the apartment to their only, dearly loved daughter. "You clearly need it more," her mother said happily. "Now you and Rosario will live even better." Rosario was as happy as a child. "We can rent it out or sell it." "What luck." Sophia didn't want to do anything with the apartment yet, it just stood there for now. She would think about what to do with it later. The only thing she did was change the decor to her taste, with a minor renovation and new furniture. All this cheered her up and distracted her from her main problems. The cooling relationship with her husband, who only seemed to show interest when he heard about the apartment, infertility treatments that were yielding no results, Sophia had plenty of problems. She was especially concerned about Rosario, who was becoming more distant, more alien and closed off. They only discussed pressing issues lately. Of course, Sophia shared her concerns with Ernesta, as always. They were no longer colleagues, her friend had found another job. She had landed a higher-paying position, which she was thrilled about. But they still communicated a lot, they both needed it. That evening, the friends were sitting in a bar. Rosario had flown off on another business trip. He was going with a joy that he tried to hide from his wife with a frowning expression and a feigned sadness in his eyes. But Sophia saw through it and understood everything. Her husband couldn't wait for this trip. "What's wrong with me?" Sophia asked her friend. "I try so hard, but he no longer looks at me the way he used to. And he's not interested in talking to me. Maybe I've become a homebody obsessed with the idea of motherhood. Who would want someone like that? Who could possibly be interested?" "Interested?" Ernesta raised her eyebrows in surprise, almost to her hairline. "Interested? Just look around you. You're interesting right now to that young guy at the table next to you. See how he's looking at you? And the guy at the bar has been staring at you for a while. Are you really not noticing that?" Sophia glanced in the direction her friend pointed and met the gaze of a man at the bar, who was clearly interested. And indeed, there was a young man at the neighboring table who couldn't take his eyes off her. It felt nice. Sophia even smiled and straightened up. She could still attract members of the opposite sex. Maybe not everything was lost in her relationship with Rosario, and she could regain the previous spark. "You're a beautiful, intelligent, and successful woman," Ernesta said, looking directly into her friend's eyes. "You've done and continue to do so much for your family. So, don't even think about blaming yourself. Got it?" "Yes, but then what's the matter?" Sophia asked, raising her hands in confusion. "Rosario is becoming more distant and doesn't even want to look at me." "I don't know," Ernesta averted her gaze. "I don't even know what to think anymore." "You know," Ernesta looked at her friend with a determined, almost harsh expression, "I didn't want to say this, but I might be wrong. Have you considered that Rosario might have someone else?" "What?" Sophia was astonished. She hadn't even entertained such a thought. It never crossed her mind at all. "Well, you see, all this seems suspicious. The cooling of the relationship, the detachment, endless business trips, work delays. And you say his salary has even decreased?" "Yes, that's right. It seems to me that this means only one thing. Unfortunately, Rosario has someone else. And he's spending a lot of time and money on her." "But how?" "Just like that. It's very simple, believe my experience. I'm not proud of having been in so many relationships, but you know, I've had my share. And I have a suspicion that Rosario is not being honest with you. I hope I'm wrong. Forgive me for being so blunt." Sophia pondered. Ernesta might be right. Rosario goes on business trips, returns looking happy and refreshed. He doesn't let go of his phone, even takes it to the bathroom. He stays late at the office, using work as an excuse, but there's really much less money now. Sophia had never thought of reproaching her husband for this. Her salary was sufficient for a comfortable life. But the fact remains. When was the last time he took her hand, hugged her, kissed her? Sophia couldn't remember. Even marital duties had become just that, duties. Sophia only now fully realized this. A loving man, a man who truly loves, wouldn't behave like this, Ernesto continued. He used to look at you differently, treat you with tenderness and care. Now it seems that Rosario is just using you. He's making pennies, essentially living off you in your own apartment. Our apartment, Sophia corrected. Yes, but you know perfectly well that it's mostly yours. You sold your two-room apartment and bought this one with a top-up. The top-up was, roughly, 50-50? No, about 80-20. You're 80%? Yes. Well, there you go, I told you, it's your apartment, to be completely honest. His contribution is minimal, it's your apartment. The apartment is one thing. Do you really think he has a mistress? The word was hard for Sophia to utter. Well, it certainly looks that way, Ernesto shook her head. Of course, I'd like to be wrong, but I wonder if it's possible to find out for sure, Sophia said thoughtfully. The friend's theory seemed more and more plausible to Sophia. I think it is possible, Ernesto nodded. If you want, I can keep an eye on him, but I'll need your help too. Let's do it, Sophia decided. I'm tired of living in this state of uncertainty. I want to know everything for sure. Sophia hoped Ernesto would bring her different news. She wanted to hear that Rosario was really spending long hours at work, caring about their future together. Maybe he was even hiding from problems that way. The child they both wanted was not coming. But no, Ernesto told her a different story. The experienced friend was right. They met at a cafe, their favorite one. They had lunch there back when they both worked together. It was cozy, not too crowded, with excellent food. Sophia usually came here in a different mood. She felt almost at home here, but not today. While waiting for her friend, Sophia fidgeted on her chair, fiddled with the edge of her napkin, and drummed her fingers on the table. Raul, the longtime waiter, even inquired if everything was okay. Sophia smiled, nodded, and tried to compose herself. Ernesto was a bit late. Sorry, Elena was being fussy. She didn't want to stay with Grandma and kept demanding me. I had to stay and put her down for a nap. Sophia nodded. She didn't ask any questions, just looked at her friend. I won't keep you in suspense, Ernesto said. Well, I turned out to be right. Your husband is cheating on you. Sophia felt as if she'd been hit over the head with a sack. Her head spun, and everything swam before her eyes. Although she was prepared for such news, it was still overwhelming. Are you sure? Couldn't be more certain. Ernesto moved closer to her friend so she could see the photos on her phone and began showing them. Ernesto turned out to be a master of covert photography. She had managed to take shots that left no room for doubt. There was Rosario and a tall, beautiful blonde walking hand in hand through a park. They looked at each other with such intensity that it was clear there was passion between them. There was the couple sitting in a restaurant, captured through the glass wall of the establishment. Rosario tenderly held his companion's hand and gazed into her eyes, seemingly saying something heartfelt. Then they were outside, and she was getting into his car while he gallantly held the door for her. But without the previous photos, this shot might have seemed quite ordinary. Rosario was generally polite to everyone. They're renting an apartment. Most likely, he's paying for everything. It's in the center, in a new development. You found that out too? Of course. Don't you know me? Sometimes he stays there overnight. Probably when he has another business trip planned or a crisis at the office. It's happening more and more lately. Probably. Listen, I know it's hard. But to leave no doubts, look at this. On the screen appeared a shot taken from a distance with maximum zoom. The outlines were blurred, but everything was quite distinguishable. On the balcony stood two people, Rosario in a robe and his beautiful blonde companion in a lovely silk pajama. Of course, they couldn't imagine they were being watched. They were embracing, smiling, probably talking about something very pleasant. In the next shot, Rosario was kissing her tenderly. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. No, she had long understood what was happening. The previous photos had conveyed it quite clearly. But now, in this last picture, everything was too obvious. Sophia felt a sharp pain somewhere in her solar plexus. Ernesta understood her friend's feelings and put away the phone. "What's wrong?" "You suspected everything already." Ernesta hugged Sophia and began to comfort her. "Well, he's unfaithful. I understand, it's hard. I've been through something similar. You know, when I was taking all those photos, I wanted to leave my hiding spot and hit him on the head. It was hard to hold back." Sophia finally smiled through her tears. She imagined the scene, Ernesta bursting out of the bushes, or wherever she had been watching from, and throwing herself at Rosario. Then grabbing the long blonde hair of his mistress. Just like a scene from some comedy. "Her name is Miranda," Ernesta continued, seeing that her friend was coming to her senses. "She just graduated from university, still very young. She came to apply for a job, and Rosario happened to be conducting the interview. They needed a specialist in his department. And, as you might guess, Miranda, the blonde, charmed him at the meeting. I think she used all her charm, batting her eyelashes and so on. And he was all ears. To be fair, he can be understood." Sophia looked at her friend in surprise and was about to sharply comment on this. "Well, she's a beautiful young woman. Clearly experienced in matters of love. And your Rosario is unfaithful by nature, so he couldn't resist." "How did you find out about how they met?" Sophia asked. Her friend sometimes amazed her to the core. "I have a friend at Rosario's company, a secretary. So, I asked her, quite casually. She ended up spilling a lot of information. Esma is the type who sees everything, hears everything, and notices everything. She figured out what was happening before anyone else. So, others at his work know about this relationship? Well, they at least suspect. You know, it's hard to hide such things." The loquacious Esma told Ernesta a lot. About Rosario's business trips coinciding with Miranda's unpaid leave, their embraces in the hallways, their dancing at the corporate party, and the passionate and adoring looks. Maybe not everyone noticed, but the informant Ernesto was naturally curious and observant. She saw everything. And she was more than happy to share information with her acquaintance. Not only with her, apparently. Rumors were surely circulating among the colleagues. "So, Sophia, that's the story," Ernesta concluded, looking at her friend with clear regret. Sophia took a deep breath, forcing back the tears that were welling up in her eyes. She would cry later, not here. "So, what should I do now?" Sophia was truly confused. "That's up to you to decide," Ernesta shook her head. "I wouldn't forgive him, but you, I don't know. I'll support whatever decision you make. I can't be with him now." "I understand." Ernesta drove Sophia home in her car. Sophia's car was in the shop. The friend said goodbye at the entrance, and Sophia was left alone with her thoughts, heavy, anxious, and contradictory. She thought and pondered what to do. She couldn't come to any conclusions. Sometimes she wanted to create a scene, then she thought it might be better to stay silent, to endure. To wait until Miranda went away on her own so she could live peacefully as before. Though, it was clear things would never be the same as before. Sophia loved Rosario, considered him her closest person, almost like family. It seemed they had a long future ahead, full of happy and joyful events. They had planned to save up for a house by the sea and move there later. They thought that in retirement, they would raise domestic animals, something they both were very interested in. Sometimes they talked about how their children would bring their grandchildren to the mini farm by the sea in the summer. Or maybe the children would settle nearby. Children, grandchildren, cozy old age side by side. And now all of that was crumbling, shattering, evaporating because Rosario had this Miranda, whom he looked at with such admiration and held so tenderly by the slim waist. To keep from losing her mind, Sophia even had to take a sedative. It helped a little, but her heart still pounded wildly. It was so hard to feel deceived and betrayed. Sophia was lying in bed when her husband returned. He unlocked the door with his key. It was already late. But he often stayed out late, supposedly at work, and now Sophia knew why. The images from Ernesto's phone were still vivid in her mind. Rosario probably thought Sophia was asleep because he moved deliberately, quietly, and carefully. He set up a bed for himself in the living room, which he now did so often. He lay down, turned the TV on at a very low volume, and poured himself a glass of something, probably wine. Sophia got up and walked decisively into the living room. No, she couldn't stay silent. She needed to clear everything up right now. "Oh, you're not asleep?" Rosario smiled at her in the dim light of the living room. The only light came from the flickering TV screen, which was showing some news program. It's hard to sleep with thoughts like these in your head. "Are you still worried about the child?" Rosario asked indifferently. He wasn't looking at his wife anymore, staring at the TV screen. But Sophia's next words made him tear his gaze away from the program. "Miranda, doesn't she mind that you leave so early?" Rosario's eyes widened in surprise. He clearly hadn't expected to hear that. Even in the dim light, it was obvious that his cheeks were turning crimson. Sophia continued, her voice tinged with outrage and despair. At times, she even raised her voice. "How could you? I trusted you so much. I thought we had real feelings. We planned so many things together. What about all of that now?" "It's your fault," Rosario said, glaring at his wife with hatred. Sophia hadn't expected this turn of events. She thought her husband would at least look guilty, but instead, he was blaming her. It was simply unimaginable. "What? That?" Rosario interrupted her sharply. "Look at what you've become. Obsessed with your treatment, running around hospitals, only thinking about the child. And me? A man needs attention, love, care. I've become secondary to you, just a means to achieve your goal, which is the child. But you wanted this too." "No, you decided that, and I didn't object. Because it was pointless. Our life suited me just fine." Sophia stared at her husband in amazement. She had envisioned their life completely differently. She did everything to have a child. And Rosario? It didn't seem to matter much to him. "Imagine, I even felt guilty for not being able to give you a son. Or a daughter. It's because you're selfish and only think about yourself. You think that if you want a child so badly, then others should feel the same way too. But that's not how it is. You didn't care about my feelings, thoughts, or desires." For a moment, Sophia even felt sorry for her husband. She considered that maybe she had been acting wrongly. But then she pushed those thoughts away. No, she couldn't give in. Rosario was trying to make her the scapegoat, but he was the one who had cheated. "I want a divorce," Sophia said firmly, and in that instant realized it was true. Yes, it would be hard, they had been together for so many years. But there was no other way. Sophia could never forgive either Miranda, the blonde, or the accusations directed at her. But wait, don't act impulsively, Rosario suddenly seemed anxious. "It's just a temporary crisis in our relationship, these things happen. Everything will be resolved." "How?" Sophia genuinely didn't understand what her still husband meant. "How can it be fixed?" "You can't turn back time." "Well, it happens to men, it happens to everyone. Sometimes you just need an outlet. Don't rush into divorce just yet." Sophia saw that Rosario was frightened, started to waffle, and immediately changed his tone. For some reason, he didn't want a divorce at all. "Why should we fuss around, dividing property?" "Aha, so that's it." Sophia realized why Rosario was so agitated. He was afraid of losing the apartment, which, in reality, belonged to Sophia. She had bought it, and Rosario had invested minimally, and he knew it perfectly. "I'll pay you your share of the apartment, about 20%, don't worry." Rosario's eyes widened once more that evening, and an unpleasant smirk appeared on his face. "Wait a minute, don't rush things. I can't stay on the same territory as you, sorry," Sophia said. She immediately mentally berated herself for saying sorry. What was she apologizing for? "I know you have somewhere to go. Miranda will gladly welcome you into the apartment you're renting for her." "What nonsense are you?" "Leave." Sophia's voice trembled with tension again. "Leave, please. I can't see or hear you anymore. You've been deceiving me all this time. It's painful and very disgusting. Leave." Rosario didn't argue, which Sophia was very grateful for. He packed his things into a backpack, took his work laptop, and left, quietly closing the door behind him. As a parting remark, he said they would definitely talk once Sophia calmed down. They would discuss everything like adults. Sophia was sitting in the same cafe where she and Ernesta usually met. They had ordered cappuccinos and chocolate pastries. Both tried to stick to their diets, but this was a special occasion, needed to sweeten the conversation. "We met in a cafe near my work," Sophia recounted to her friend the details of the meeting with Rosario. "He was such a..." He tried to wriggle out of it. Said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, forgivable for men. "And you?" Naturally, I was adamant. "For me, it's betrayal and deceit. How can you continue living and building a future with someone like that?" "Exactly," Ernesta approved. "You didn't find yourself in a dumpster." "What happened next?" "Well, he tried to blame me again. Said I paid no attention to him, was absorbed in my own thoughts and worries. I expected that, so I was prepared for it. And then? Then he told me about this Miranda. Although, honestly, I wasn't interested in the details at all. According to Rosario, the beautiful blonde came into his life just when he felt lost and lonely. He had a lot of work piled up, and his boss was constantly dissatisfied with how Rosario handled his duties. How was he supposed to manage it all alone? At home, the atmosphere wasn't pleasant either. Sophia was obsessed with her idea of becoming a mother. Rosario didn't understand her fervor. Sure, having a child is nice. But if it's not happening, why get so upset? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't. If you think about it, children come with many problems. When they're little, sleepless nights, diapers, constant supervision. Then school, extracurriculars, and entertainment. It's money, time, and extra nerves. Rosario probably didn't want to become a parent that badly. But for Sophia, it seemed to have become the main goal in her life. Rosario didn't recognize his wife. The once cheerful, lighthearted, and witty girl had become someone completely different. Always sad, dissatisfied, and unwilling to talk about anything other than her tests. She even tried to drag Rosario into all of it, examinations, treatments. But he had firmly refused. He had hated hospitals since childhood. And he was fine in this regard. They had almost made him a father against his will. Well, at least that was avoided. Overall, Rosario wasn't in the best state of mind. And then she came. Beautiful, with sparkling eyes, ready for adventures. Miranda came to Rosario for an interview, and sparks flew between them right away. Rosario understood perfectly. The girl was trying to charm him. Maybe she wanted him to hire her. Maybe she hoped to start a romance with someone who could take her to restaurants and buy her gifts. Perhaps both played a role. Rosario didn't care. He realized Miranda would help him shake things up. Feel young and alive again. At first, it was true, everything felt sharper around her. Rosario even thought he was happy. Then their relationship evolved into something more serious. This scared him a little, but it was still enticing. Rosario rented an apartment for Miranda, his salary allowed it. And he and Sofia had joint savings, a sum of money was in the bank for a rainy day. Rosario spent that money to please Miranda. They traveled a lot. The girl loved beautiful beaches, warm seas, and oceans. And swimsuits looked stunning on her. Rosario used business trips as a cover, and Sofia believed him. And in general, it seemed like she didn't care. The woman was focused on her treatment, looking for new methods, consulting various doctors. In general, she led her completely uninteresting life to Rosario. Miranda, she completely enchanted me. I'll leave her, come back to you. We'll start over. We'll definitely become parents, I promise. I'll do everything for that. Now I understand how wrong I was. Sofia found it hard to recall that conversation with her husband. Rosario initially looked pitiful, then moody and irritable. Eventually, he appeared downright dangerous. He started threatening me. Sofia smiled. How so? Ernesta gasped. Well, at first, he said he wouldn't let me go, that he couldn't live without me. What? Ernesta snorted. I hope you didn't believe that. No, of course not. But then the threats took on a different tone. The conversation turned to the division of property. For obvious reasons, Sofia expected that she would become the owner of the apartment, which had essentially been purchased with her money. I'll give you your share, she said, looking at her husband, who had stopped pretending to be the bewildered, lovesick man. It was clear now, the discussion was about what mattered most to him. We both know whose money bought our apartment, so it's only fair. At that point, Rosario's face changed. There was no longer any hint of deep, strong feelings for Sofia. Instead, his eyes flashed with malice. You're mistaken, Rosario said. According to the law, all property owned by spouses is divided equally. The apartment, the bank account, our cars. So don't even hope. I'll hire lawyers who will make sure you get nothing. By the way, that apartment you recently inherited from your uncle, it's also considered joint property since you acquired it while married. Sofia stared at her husband in shock. She hadn't expected this. What a scoundrel! Ernesta hissed. I wish I'd been there. I would have definitely confronted him. Sofia looked at her friend and realized that Ernesta could indeed have done that. You need a lawyer, an experienced specialist in these matters, Ernesta said. I think I know someone who fits the bill. The divorce process was long and difficult. Rosario, for obvious reasons, didn't want to lose his assets. After all, he had a young lover who valued him only for his money, and he understood that perfectly. Without the money, Miranda wouldn't stick around. Who would be interested in him then? Rosario fought for the apartment and the money like a hawk. He found some shrewd lawyers, but even they couldn't do anything. By law, the apartment was supposed to be divided equally, but the cars. Both cars, bought with their joint savings, went to Rosario. Well, to Rosario? Officially, they were in his mother's name. So, technically, they were his. The man had arranged the purchase of the vehicles himself. Sofia fully trusted her husband, so she didn't pay attention to who was listed as the owner of the cars. Rosario hadn't done it intentionally. There was a significant discount for pensioners at the dealership, so he decided to save money. He registered the purchases in his mother's name. Now it turned out that this played in his favor. Sofia also hired a lawyer, as Ernesta had recommended. He was a young lawyer with an inscrutable face, Delmar Rivera. Collected, self-assured, and very fair. At first, Delmar seemed aloof and cold to Sofia. But as she got to know him better, she realized that he was a very kind and courageous person. It was just his way of communicating with clients, somewhat detached. Delmar managed to prove in court that Sofia's contribution to the purchase of the family apartment was the largest. She had kept some receipts and contracts. Sofia hadn't intentionally saved all that. She had just stuffed papers into her documents, thinking she would throw them away later. And now, they came in handy. In the end, Del Mar achieved what seemed impossible. The apartment was divided in a 20-80 ratio, as Sophia had hoped. The cars, however, went to Rosario. But Rosario faced another unpleasant surprise in court. It turned out that the apartment from Uncle Rafael, which Sophia had inherited and which Rosario had hoped to claim half of, was registered in Sophia's mother's name. So, Rosario had no claim there either. You should have seen his eyes when the judge announced this information. Sophia savored the moment. She had purposely not disappointed her almost ex-husband beforehand. But now, she enjoyed watching his reaction. She didn't even feel sorry for him, he brought it upon himself. As for the money in the joint account, it was split evenly, which even Del Mar could not change. It wasn't truly fair. After all, Rosario had long been withdrawing significant amounts from the joint account for gifts to Miranda, her apartment rent, and their joint travels. But what could be done now? Sophia was genuinely pleased with Del Mar's work and considered the small losses a price worth paying for getting rid of Rosario. Rosario and Sophia were divorced. Each got what they deserved. During the case, Sophia and Del Mar communicated a lot. He gave no indication of his feelings. On the contrary, he remained detached and seemed closed off. He spoke only on professional topics. Sophia felt a bit hurt. She liked Del Mar. She tried to attract his attention, used her feminine charms, futilely. Eventually, Sophia thought he must be involved with someone else and felt a bit foolish. She was somewhat embarrassed by her behavior. But then, after the last meeting was over, Del Mar approached her himself. He smiled a little bashfully, congratulated her on the victory, and he invited me to dinner at a restaurant to celebrate the successful completion of the case. Sophia shared excitedly with Ernesta. Of course, I accepted. We talked a lot that evening, and Del Mar was completely different. He joked, talked about himself, asked me questions. He was interested in everything about me. He already knew a lot, of course, as a lawyer, but now he wanted to know more, what flowers I like, how I enjoy spending my time, and so on. It turned out that he liked me a lot too. How did you not notice that? Ernesta wondered. You're not in school anymore. Well, Del Mar said it would have been unprofessional and could have jeopardized the case if he had shown his feelings earlier. That's why he hid his feelings. Can you believe it? Sophia felt truly happy. Justice had been served. Moreover, fate had given her such a wonderful gift, bringing her together with an amazing man, intelligent, caring, and sincere. With him, Sophia felt loved. Just a couple of months ago, she couldn't have even dreamed of such a thing. She thought she would never be able to trust anyone again. I'm happy for you, my friend, Ernesta said with a smile, looking at the glowing Sophia. So, when are you going on vacation? The day after tomorrow. Del Mar said he would show me some breathtaking beach that I've never seen before. I can't wait.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.